Okay.
Oops.
Ready.
We had a good laugh about it.
Okay. All right, so the exosystem, it might be a little weird because we're jumping over mesosystem for micro, because micro is so but it basically covers indirect and external influences on a child. And so we kind of broke it down a little bit. I'm going to cover the media part because the digital and social media, all of that stuff, it is actually an exosystem because it comes into the home and into the classroom externally. And then these guys are going to cover the other parts of it. Yeah?
Yes. Accommodations.
The accommodations. Okay. So so with the media, you know, we do have an issue. I mean, it's moving very quickly, of course, we know, and it does provide the connectivity and the mobility that can actually be a benefit to families because that means that, you know, we can email, you know, to our work from the soccer field if we're attending a game, and you know, we can, you know, kind of pass back. There's a pass back factor to a lot of media now, where it's a tablet that has a game on it, or that has an interactive book, or, you know, something like that. That, in a sense, we're getting media to become almost like a mobile babysitter. Again, has positives and negatives to that, but in all of those ways, that is how it is externally affecting the children. Now, it can be problematic, of course. We all know this. How our screens and our screen time affecting our children's cognitive developments, that is still being debated and researched. Their social developments, their emotional development, and even their physical development. And so that is, but since it's kind of such a new thing and it's still emerging and changing so rapidly, there's not a ton of research necessarily on that, or it's just still ongoing. So the problem does become, though, that not all children have equal access to the variety and to the you know, the same quality of media, not in their homes at times, and not in classrooms at times. You know, our schools, at least I know my school, basically went one-to-one last year, and then there are schools within our own Salt Lake Valley which, you know, have 2 computers that are broken in the back of each classroom or something, and so that access to digital media and technology is a big issue when it comes to this. My case study was about a cute little 3rd grader named Alejandra, who one of the only 3rd graders in her class to have a cell phone, but it was an old, like, little razor kind of flip phone thing that she mainly used to text, and it was a big help to her family. And you know, she would text while mom was driving to tell dad, because they only had one car, oh, we're on our way, blah blah blah, right? She used it to text with her cousin who lived in Alabama, and they had maintained a good relationship that way. And so I think we tend to look at media and everything as this negative, bad force, but this case study was pretty positive. The issues did arise, though, when at school the access to any sort of media was super limited, because what they had was super old, their broadband was not at all up to date, and the teachers were of an older generation and weren't comfortable with it. And so then there becomes that disparity between is what a child is learning at home with social media, when that is so much more advanced to what they're dealing with at school, is that disparity a problem? Which, I mean, I would argue that it is. So, you know, there's all of that issue with media when it comes to the exosystem. So,
I'll talk about the chapter, and then you can talk about the case study.
Okay.
Okay, so then the other part, the accommodation model, again, it's these factors that affect the child, but that the child doesn't have control over. And ours talks more about the decisions that parents make that are sometimes even out of the parents' control, like if they are working at a job that pays hourly and they have to work a lot of hours, they aren't home when the child is around, which then of course can lead to decisions that the student makes that are maybe start off positive and then ultimately without supervision they can go off and start doing things that are negative to them on a lot of levels. And so some of the factors that play into that are like work and the socioeconomic status of the parents that the students have no control over. So they may not have new shoes, they may not have the backpack that they need, but the parents don't have the means to provide it for them, but that's out of the student's control. But it affects the students 100%. So that, as well as the child care that's available to the parents in that neighborhood, the cost of it, the quality of it is typically out of their control as well. The schools that they go to, because of the areas that they live in, are out of their control. And then also the social network, the friends that the parents have and their kids and how they were raised are all things that the parents decide more or less, or that the parents have more control over it than the students, but it's the students that deal with a lot of the fallout. So in addition to all of that stuff, things at school include like IEPs, that the students only have so much input. They get tested, we find out their needs, we give them accommodations, and what part of the conversation includes the students. Not a whole lot of it, as well as CPS and foster care, that if the parent decides to sign over or not sign over when it should be their legal right to their child, that can affect them. They can go into a foster home, or maybe they should be taken out of like a negative home environment, but they aren't because the parent doesn't give it up. So there's a lot of these factors that are really huge in a child's life that have no part of the conversation includes them. So that leads us to our case study.
Yeah. So Deontay was in, oh gosh, yeah, I forgot. What grade was he?
He's like in 8th grade.
Like 8th grade.
Mm-hmm.
And
6th and then through 8th.
Okay, yeah. So he has a single mom, has a little brother, and single mom works at a job, makes like $7 an hour, is non-discreetly using drugs. She's pretty open about it, has admitted to that. Oftentimes, it was mentioned that she would do it at night to relax after her hard day. So he's seeing that in his home, and it's acceptable. His little brother is really angry and has his own challenges that greatly affected what was happening at home and kind of deflected from Deontay. The mom was deciding whether or not it would be better for the little brother to be put into foster care, because she would have to give up rights to him and custody, but the idea that could benefit that brother and get the resources he needed and paid for, that she couldn't herself help her own son with. And hopefully then Deontay could get some more of her attention and kind of she could work with him. She had received a letter home from the school saying that Deontay had a learning disability, but she either didn't remember their name or was never told what like the diagnosis was, and so she didn't really have maybe the resources or that exosystem of herself, of peers, to know how to move forward with that. The school they would call, but never really kept that follow through from happening. And he became more active probably in like the gang community, stopped going to school, and kind of got lost in the shuffle. It says at the end that the teacher had one of his teachers had realized he hadn't been coming and went down to talk to the psychologist. She did see him in the school on her way to the meeting, and he was just like, yeah, I don't like school. And anyway, so she goes to the meeting, and the psychologist was like, oh yeah, I've heard that name, but then it all kind of got flat. Like the teacher knew about it, the psychologist knew about him, someone who had probably given him this diagnosis, special ed, whoever it may have been, they all knew about him, but then kind of lost all the follow through to help him. He doesn't know that he needed that support. So those exosystems were failing him essentially from him not knowing what he needed and how to change any of that. that. And his mom didn't either, so.
And so one of the biggest like takeaways was that communication was totally lacking, and that would have made all the difference. That had the teacher gone to the psychiatrist or psychologist and had gone to the sped teachers who tested him and diagnosed him, and they had just had a conversation with the mom to actually get the thing signed, everything would have been a little bit better than it was in this situation.
So,
Questions?
open for questions. Or, yes,
I also
questions.
think from a special education perspective, it's important to know, probably in this situation, maybe they could have done more.
Yeah.
But also there are situations where we're trying to contact
Totally.
the parent, but like they work all day or
Totally.
they.
And that was very
are using
much
this or whatever
present,
else.
yeah, and
Yeah.
she, I mean, I assume that she just didn't know and assumed it would be fine or work
Yeah.
itself out.
Yeah.
And so there's a huge roadblock there that like we only have so much control over for sure.
But I acknowledge that there are some educators that don't do their duty.
Sure, sure.
Or they get too slammed with.
And the mom might think, oh, well, my kid's bad, or like, well, that's your job to fix it. I don't,
Yeah.
so, yeah.
Well, and
it's-
that's
it's
where
from both
teaming
sides.
really comes into play. When I think about the way that, you know, our team, we meet weekly with our counselor and with our VP to make plans for how to contact and what to do next and who's gonna follow through. And then we're accountable to each other as well as, you know, to the student and parent, you know, might have an issue there.
Had the parent already signed all the paperwork for testing?
It did
Pass
No,
it,
the
or they
testing got
continue?
done, so there was a diagnosis, so the testing got done. But as far as we know,
Regardless of the
nothing,
parent signing
It didn't
paperwork?
say,
They would have had to sign.
But you have to take
Yeah.
a sign to
Yeah.
get permission to test.
Yeah.
and that's what I
She heard
assumed.
what the testing results were, so she probably thought, well, okay, I'm done.
Maybe, yeah,
It
maybe
could
she just
be.
thought that she was done, but clearly it
They
wasn't.
don't know there's more
right.
to it.
And
Well,
again,
you
like,
tested
that's-
it, but now fix the problem, you know,
Right.
like,
Yeah,
go
like-
do what you gotta do.
Yeah, you know that I was okay with
Yeah.
the testing, so do
Right.
the
They don't know
accommodations
that
too.
there's more to it.
Yeah.
Right, and again, yeah, that leads to a conversation, but it can be really hard to have when the mom is overwhelmed, has two kids that have their individual problems, has her own substance abuse issues.
And kind of prioritizing, well, this kid's getting in trouble, and this one still is doing okay, so I have to
Yeah.
prioritize which kid.
Was
Got
there,
attention.
was there a language barrier? Did they talk about that?
I don't
It
recall,
wasn't
it
mentioned.
didn't
Okay,
say.
just cause it reminded me of like how yesterday we were talking about how the different parents, they aren't familiar with the school
Right.
system too, so she might have just been like,
Well, and I
Totally
don't think that
unaware,
most, I mean, unless you've had experience yourself with special ed or with
Yeah.
a sibling or something, most people don't know the system of special
Right,
ed
right.
either,
Yeah.
or testing and what needs to happen, and so, I mean, it's just, it's a stepping, you know, point up for people, even without a language barrier. I
Yeah.
mean,
Sure.
put that in, yeah.
Beans?
Okay.
We still have a while, like, let's do 5 more minutes, maybe like with different examples and
For us?
questions.
For us?
We've been going 13 minutes.
Yeah.
I thought we were supposed to
Yeah.
have 15 minutes, like 30 minutes per section.
30 minutes per section? No, it was like
15.
It's like.
It was
Yeah,
15.
the video was.
Yeah, that's 30
I mean,
minutes
it
per
says